We're off mute.
Okay. Welcome, everybody, to the October 3rd, 2022 Finance Committee meeting. We appreciate you being here. Just so folks in Zoom land know, Mr. Johnson is here in person. Mr. Escabel and Dr. Aldridge are both present via Zoom. We appreciate you both being here today. If anyone has plans to make comments under public comment, I would ask you to please approach the table and identify yourself for the record. Also, if you could, if everyone could please make sure their cell phones are either on Zoom or on Zoom, on silent or mute, I would certainly appreciate that. And with, oh, one other thing, we will just be discussing items that are on the agenda. So thank you, everyone. And with that, Jen, go ahead and read off the first item, please.
Number 13, ordinance second reading, amending section 9.08.020, annoying, obscene, or threatening telephone calls of chapter 9.08, offenses against the public peace and decency of Title IX, public peace and welfare of the municipal code of the city of Cheyenne, Wyoming, modifying the elements of the offense of annoying, obscene, or threatening telephone calls.
Is there a staff report on this item?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. John Brody, Deputy City Attorney. So what you have before you are, I guess, is the initial proposal that was submitted to the governing body, and then there's a substitute that you should have a copy of as well. Depending on the pleasure of Mr. Chairman, I can speak to the substitute, or I can kind of more in general strokes talk about the proposal itself.
Sure. Why don't you start off with that and just kind of walk us to where we got to where we are today with this the substitute.
Very well, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
For me.
Oh,
So, Mr. Chairman, the city attorney's office was asked to update 9/8/20 in light of it being somewhat antiquated and not really reflecting the developments in technology and how people are communicating more and more via social media and text messages, for example.
right.
The idea being that if there were obscene, annoying, or harassing text messages, it wasn't always clear that the city of Cheyenne would be able to prosecute those. So what we did is we took the current code provision, and then we borrowed the basically the same crime that is defined by Wyoming statute, which is in Wyoming statute 66103. And we took that statute and then basically tried to plug it into the city code. There are two ways that we sort of deviated from state statute. The first being that state statute requires that the caller be anonymous. Just speaking to the proposal internally in the city attorney's office, we felt that it wasn't really necessary to limit it to anonymous phone calls. Someone you know can just as easily harass you as someone you don't know. So the idea was to just broaden it a bit so that it would capture whether you're anonymous or not. So that's basically the proposal in a general sense.
And then the substitute.
Yeah, so since we submitted it to the governing body, we noticed one, it was probably appropriate to get rid of the word annoying in the title of the statute because it's not really mentioned, and harassing phone calls is really the conduct that it's trying to speak to. The second component is if you look on the original under subsection B1, it spoke in the context of only anonymous telephone calls. And as we continued to look at it, it made more sense to have that comport with subsection A where it's not anonymous, and then to broaden it a little bit so that it covers electronic communications in addition to telephone calls. So that's really the gist of the change is in B1 as far as substance. Just as cleanup under section 2, we also kind of expanded the severability clause to cover not only if it is unconstitutional, but if for whatever reason a portion of the code was held to be unlawful. The other unimplicated provisions of the code provision could continue to operate. So that's the substitute and the proposal in general.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Brody. Stand by for questions. Are there any comments or questions from members of the public?
Oh, sorry, no. Dr. Aldridge has her hand raised, but you'll take
Right.
that after.
We'll get to her here. in
Sorry,
just a
I
minute.
saw the hand go up and.
No comments or questions from the public?
No.
Thanks, Jen. Hearing none, do I have a motion from the committee?
I guess I'll do it since I'm actually here. Mr. Chair, I move to approve on second reading.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Comments or questions from the committee? Go ahead, Dr. Aldridge.
Thank you, Chairman White. I just have a question about this. As I was reading through here, I noticed that the one thing that's been left out of the rewrite from the original ordinance is the line in A that says the attempt to extort money or other things of value from any person or family by means of use of the telephone. And so I would like to amend that we reinsert. I know we're not on the amendment yet, but I'd like to be able to reinsert that piece somehow.
Okay, Dr. Aldridge noted. And once we deal with the substitute, we'll get to the amendment.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none. All those in favor, we need a motion for the substitute, if you would, please, Richard, sorry.
What's your date on it?
Okay, I wish to move to submit substitute approved 9:49 a.m. on October 3rd, 2022.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. So now we are on the substitute. Go ahead, Dr. Aldridge. You had some language that you wanted to reinsert.
Yes, I'd like to reinsert under line section A, where and I think the best place to insert this is probably in the next to last line where it says communicates with another person. And then it goes into uses obscene, lewd, or profane language or suggest a lewd or lascivious act with intent to terrify, intimidate, threaten, harass, annoy, or offend. And we might add it right at the end there, where it could say, or attempts to extort money or other things of value from any person or family.
Mr. Brody, Jen, are you, were you able to keep track of that language there?
Yes, Mr.
Yeah,
Chair.
well, Mr. Chair,
Mr. Escabel,
and was there a reason the city attorney took that language out? Did it not fit with this ordinance?
Mr. Brody?
There was no substantive reason. The directive was trying to update the code provision, so we looked to state statute, and that was just kind of the approach that was taken, but it's certainly been the discretion of the committee to reinsert that if that's what they'd like.
Okay, so we're discussing amending the substitute to reinsert the language that was given by Dr. Aldridge. Are there any comments or questions on that?
We need a second. Do you have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Richard.
It's been moved, thank you. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye.
All right.
Aye.
We got to roll it. Aye.
It's okay. As no one's opposed, the amendment is passed. So now we are back on the substitute as amended. We're going to need a Venn diagram by the time this is all over. Okay, are there any comments or questions on the substitute as amended?
I'll let the Zoom people go first, but yes.
Okay,
I don't see any hands raised here.
go ahead.
All right, I'm gonna be no on the substitute, strictly on the way that we changed the language. I have to go back and see what we did because of the conflict we had between state statute on the definition of harassment versus annoying. And so I want to go back and see what we actually did several months ago and how we defined the word harassment and if it actually needs in context with what we're doing here.
Thank you, Richard. Other comments or questions?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Escabel?
and the only other comment I'd make was that the electronic footprint, whether the person's anonymous, is very easy for the police department or any law enforcement to follow.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions on the substitute as amended? Hearing none, all those in favor of the substitute, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
The substitute passes with Mr. Johnson voting no. Now, we're on the main motion with the substitute. Any comments or questions on the main motion with the substitute as amended? Hearing none, all those in favor of the main motion as amended, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
The main motion as amended passes with Mr. Johnson as a no. Next item, please. Thank you, Mr. Brody.
Number 21, resolution authorizing the acceptance of a fiscal year 21 building resilient infrastructure and communities grant for scoping and design work for the Cheyenne Clear Creek Detention Storage Facility.
Mr. Cobb.
Chairman White, members of the Finance Committee, Tom Cobb, City Engineer, before you, as stated, is a resolution for your consideration authorizing the acceptance of the fiscal year 21 Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities Grant Program. This grant, this is something we've been looking at for quite a while, I guess from my staff's perspective. And on the screen, I just wanted to show you kind of what we're looking at entailing. From that source, I just want to say the scope of this work will include, field surveys, reconnaissance and collection, and all the pertinent data we need for designing the structure. And also then, I guess the main purpose of this is to really find the confluence of Clear Creek and Crow Creek to attenuate some of this runoff that's been also affecting the businesses and landowners downstream. And in addition to that is to help facilitate actually emergency services, because obviously these are only three primary areas that we can cross the UP. This is one of those three. So in that regard, if you look on the screen, the detention facility will be located within the Dave Romero Park area. So of that very large area that I've kind of outlined there would be this inline to storage facility that would then prevent Clear Creek runoff from entering into Crow Creek at that point. And the black line represents where we would put storm sewer down probably on 9th there, come down into the creek further downstream. Again, the two properties that I'm looking at with the red there are properties that we currently do not own. We own all the other properties around it. The bottom one is a new owner. He owns a little bit of the old right of way there. And then the UP is the north owner. So again, I think with this end-fine facility, we should be able to mitigate quite a bit of the flood control and help those neighbors downstream. With that, I guess I would tell you the amount of the grant is about $262,500. Our particular match is $87,500, and it would be from the 1% range with the fifth penny. And with that, if any questions you have, I'd be happy to take.
Thank you, Mr. Cobb. Stand by. Comments or questions from members of the public? Hearing none, do I have a motion on the resolution?
Okay, I have a technical question, I guess, on that one. On a resolution, typically, we don't have a monetary amount, so it doesn't need to be actually.
It's just adopt. We just adopt.
Okay, very good. I just wanted to make sure with you again that we didn't need the grant and the city match in it. Okay, yeah, Mr. Chair, I move to adopt.
It's been moved in second to adopt. Comments or questions from members of the committee? Hearing none. All those in favor of the resolution, please signify by saying aye.
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 As no one's opposed, that item moves forward. Next item, please.
Number 22, resolution authorizing the acceptance of a fiscal year 21 building resilient infrastructure and communities grant for scoping and design work for the Cheyenne Crow Creek 19th Street Crossing Improvement Project.
Mr. Cobb?
Chairman White, members of the Finance Committee, Tom Cobb, City Engineer, before you again is a resolution to accept a FEMA brick grant for the Crow Creek structure. In this case, we are looking at an amount of about $180,000 for the grant. The scope of this work will include field survey and reconnaissance and collection of all the pertinent data necessary for hydraulic modeling and looking at a full design, the replacement of the structures on Crow Creek. What I've been showing you in front of it is the structure itself. If you look at the picture on the left, is the three existing the structures that are there now. They're undersized and we have overtopping in very small events. So we get inundation along the corridor. The three pictures on the right are the alternatives originally looked at from a 2010 study from the NPO. And it looked at basically three primary alternatives. One was the extension of 19th itself. One was actually replacement and going up to 20th. And then sort of the third alternative looked at was structures at both locations. And for this grant, we looked at the design and we're going to reevaluate those original options that were reviewed and also include the greenway component in this area so that there is a connection. And with that, I'll take any questions that you might have. In this case, I'm sorry, the match on this one, just so you know, is $60,000 and also would come from the 1% drainage fund.
Thanks, Mr. Cobb. Stand by. Comments or questions from members of the public? Hearing none, do I have a motion from the committee?
Mr. Chair, I move to adopt.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Comments from the committee? Go ahead, Richard.
So I guess I'm looking at your improvement project because Jeff and I've actually cleaned up under this, where these tunnels are. So in this plan, I know it's for mostly like flood mitigation and working on that. Is there any plans like to actually do some kind of filtration so that people can't live in those tunnels anymore? Or is this strictly going to focus on flooding and redirection of water?
Chairman White, through you to Councilman Johnson. So Councilman Johnson, I think we obviously want to look at all those components. The unfortunate part is sometimes when we look at if you enclose these structures, okay, we don't want to trap debris either. So, I mean, I've looked at some of these other ones. It's a very difficult thing. We can place them on the upstream side because then debris flies, comes over the top. But if you start to block the downstream side and we get something trapped, I don't have a full answer to this, but I'm sure happy to have the consultant take a very good look at this. And I'm sure there are folks that have dealt with this in other regions of the country. So we'll put that as a scoping item in for you. And I think it makes a lot of sense, but I can't promise anything because it is a very difficult thing to do. But we were looking at three different alternatives for this. It was, I didn't state that earlier, a prefabricated pipe arch was one option, a bridge was another option, and there was also a 5-cell box culvert. So those were the original ones reviewed, and we're certainly open to other options.
Okay.
Tom, I have a question for you. With the three alternatives that you've listed here, those you said were from about 2010. That's been 12 years. Are there any other alternatives, technology that's been implemented since then that would, in your expertise, say these still aren't probably the best ones?
Chairman White, to answer your question directly, I think there might be some other options. So as far as feasibility of where we go with this, but we do have to be careful about where the structure is placed in relationship to that existing concrete batch plant. So we're going to relook at all those three alternatives. I don't have anything specific in mind about what we do at this point. I do like, from the hydraulic perspective, I do like the bridge the best, but it is the most expensive. At that time, it was coming in about 1.1 million. So I would say that we're 3 times that price since 2010. So we're probably looking at 3 to 4 million. And the Conspan precast pipe arch was about 680,000. So I'm sure it's about 1.2 million. And then the box culverts were 890 at the time. So I'm looking at probably 1.5 to 1.8. It's where we are right now. As you said, it's been a while. Don't have any new technologies, same technology, but hopefully we can come up with something very effective in and be able to fulfill all the boxes.
Thank you for that information, Tom. And when you say this has been on the radar for a long time, 1988 is a very, very, very long time. Any other comments or questions from members of the committee? Hearing none, all those in favor of the resolution to authorize acceptance of the grant, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
As no one's opposed, that item moves forward. Next item, please.
Number 24H, agreement between the City of Cheyenne Transit Program and the Wyoming Department of Health Aging Division to provide transportation service support services for persons 60 years or older under the Title III B program grant for fiscal year 23.
Staff report. Hi, Renee.
Hello, Renee Jordan, Transit Department. This is our annual agreement with the Wyoming Department of Health for 3B funds and ARP funds. This year, the agreement provides $82,674 in federal funds and $4,725 in state funds. There is also a local match requirement of $7,306. These funds are used to subsidize our senior fares, which allow those 60 and older to ride for free. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thanks, Renee. Stand by. Comments or questions from members of the public? Hearing none, do I have a motion from the committee?
Yes. Right, I know I read this morning, that like your 7,000 number, is that the?
Jeff, I had a question. Sorry, you didn't see my hand probably go up.
Oh. Okay, we'll get to you, Dr. Aldridge. Is the number correct?
Yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve an amount not to exceed $87,399.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Dr. Aldridge.
I just had a quick question, Chairman White, through you to Renee. I'm just wondering if this amount is sufficient to cover the numbers of requests that we get for transportation from our seniors.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, yes, it is. It does cover it plus a little extra.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Other comments or questions from the committee? Well, it's a very important program and we're certainly happy to get the help from both the feds and the state to help our seniors with this. If there are no other comments or questions, all those in favor of this agreement, please signify by saying aye.
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 As no one's opposed, that item moves forward. Thanks, Renee. Next item, please.
Number 24I, professional services agreement between the City of Cheyenne and Cheyenne Metropolitan Planning Organization, MPO, and Y2 Consultants LLC for the Van Buren Avenue corridor study.
Staff report.
I'm Jenny Stevenson, Senior Transportation Planner with the Cheyenne MPO. The Cheyenne MPO is requesting approval for professional services for the contract for the Van Buren Avenue corridor plan. This contract is for Y2, the selected consultant, to provide engineering analysis and public engagement for the recommendation of improvements for Van Buren Avenue from US 30 to Dell Range Boulevard for a total contract cost not to exceed $103,190. For any questions.
Thank you, Jenny. Stand by for questions, comments or questions from the public.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Laybourne.
first of all, I'd like to note that I'm not a member of the public. I'm a member of the council and I'm here to learn about these projects so they can vote on them when we go to the meeting itself. But am I to understand that this project will coordinate the drainage that's upcoming on Van Buren as well, so that we're doing them both together?
So, Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Laybourne, so in the contract, we have that the consultants will work closely with engineering and all of the work that they're doing for drainage to make sure that they work in coordination. This is just a planning study, so it's not for actual construction. However, we have specifically outlined that they are to work with city engineering as well as their consultant.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Other comments or questions from the public? Hearing none, do I have a motion on the professional services agreement?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve an amount not to exceed $103,190.
A second.
It's been moved and seconded. Comments or questions from the committee? Just one question, Jenny. Can you just reiterate for the record on where the $103,000 is coming from, please?
Yes, sir, Mr.
Sometimes we
Chairman.
get questions on those things.
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. So the funds would be coming from the NPO federal funds with 90.49% being federal funds, and the remaining 9.51 funds is a split between city and county.
Thank you. If there are no other comments or questions from the committee, all those in favor of the professional services agreement, please signify by saying aye.
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 As no one's opposed, that item moves forward.
Number 24J, telecommunications right-of-way license and use agreement between the city of Cheyenne and Unity Dark Fiber LLC.
Staff report.
Good afternoon, Stephanie Boster, Cheyenne City Attorney. You have before you a telecommunications right-of-way license and use agreement between Unity Dark Fiber LLC and the City of Cheyenne. This is our standard license and use agreement. This originally was negotiated between Attorney Mike O'Donnell and Unity, and they held it back for about a year. So now it's in front of you. It's the standard 75 per linear foot of conduit fee that we have used in all of our right-of-way agreements for the past couple of years. There's no other changes to this standard agreement, and I am open for questions.
Stand by, Attorney Boster. Comments or questions from members of the public?
Hands raised.
Hearing none, do I have a motion from the committee?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve. Oh, did you have anything?
Oh, sorry, Seth.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Seth Lloyd. I'm a resident of Cheyenne. I also happen to be a city employee, so I'm familiar somewhat with these agreements, but not in the details. I do have a little bit of concerns about our right-of-way agreements generally. I've heard some concerns that our right-of-way department isn't being treated very well by some of our fiber optic companies. And so I'm concerned that maybe these agreements don't have some of the teeth that they need to have. I'm also wondering about duration, like, is this a 5-year duration? Is this a forever duration? What kind of opportunities do we have to renegotiate these types of things? I'm sorry for kind of bringing this up last moment, but I didn't realize this was on the agenda until just now. But I do have some concerns of that nature with these utility agreements. And I'm also concerned that some utilities, probably not the fiber optic companies as much, but some of the utilities might be charging our developers exorbitant fees to connect to their systems. So I'm just wondering where the accountability might be able to come forward.
Thank you, Seth, and I think your concerns are duly noted and shared, quite honestly. Stephanie, can you, looking at the agreement, I think to answer one of Seth's questions was that the agreement was for a period of 5 years. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, through you, or to you, on page 2, paragraph 3 of the agreement, the term of the agreement is 5 years.
And then there was also a termination clause at the end of the contract, which indicates that we can terminate the contract if the company fails to perform in terms of the agreement. Is there any time frame limitation on that?
And Mr. Chairman, yes, on page 8, paragraph, let's see. Q 7Q of the agreement is our termination clause. We have threatened termination of other right-of-way agreements for other cable companies who have treated our staff poorly. So that's certainly a provision we're willing to enforce. There is really no deadline or time frame in relation to that termination clause.
Thank you. Other comments or questions from members of the public?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Laybourne.
Well, Mr. Lloyd raises a very interesting question that seems to resonate with many of us, but could we possibly get a report or some sort of analysis of the magnitude of these problems and how they are being dealt with, and certainly it's a key issue, especially with a growing city and our existing right of way. So I think this is worthy of some analysis, Mr. Chairman, and I hope that we can get some so that we can better understand this problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Laybourne. Other comments or questions from the public?
Can Seth acknowledge that his questions were answered in case he might have something before we?
Sure. Is Seth still
Yeah,
here?
he's still in.
Seth, we just wanted to make sure you could acknowledge that your questions were answered.
Yes, Mr. Chair, and unfortunately, my internet connection wasn't available, so I couldn't really look at the agreement, but I assume that I agree with the having a duration on them. I appreciate the enforcement clause, and I would appreciate figuring out what more we might be able to do to make these a better agreement for everybody involved.
Thank you. And thank you for your concern, Seth. Any comment or questions on that?
No,
Or
Mr.
any
Chairman.
comments on that, Stephanie? Okay. As hearing no other comments or questions from members of the public, is there a motion from the committee on this right-of-way agreement?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve.
A second.
It's been moved and seconded. Comments or questions from the committee?
I'll let Zoom go first if they have any.
Go ahead, Richard.
So in regards to the 2020 part of your contract, since it looked like that was everybody that was grandfathered into that time, and since it's currently 2022, is there any reason why we still leave that 2020 language in? Or is it just a kind of an FYI to pass, or, you know, for any future right of way for fiber optics, that was what the agreement was in the past, in case the attorneys went back and looked to see what, you know, previous agreements were? Is that why we leave it in there, or is it something that we can strike from future contract?
Mr. Chairman, through you to Councilman Johnson, I think you're referring to page 2, paragraph.
May have to be.
Yeah, and I left that in there because Attorney O'Donnell had negotiated that directly with Unity, but I might follow up with them and see if we can't update it to 2022, since there's been some delay in executing this contract on their.
And then just have a follow-up comment.
Go ahead.
Can you please start an email thread with planning to get kind of Seth's take, you know, on what he's hearing from his developers in regards to not only courteous of staff, but also the people that work within the city. So maybe on future agreements, we might have an additional clause on there, you know, not just on our termination, but, you know, anything else that Seth and Charles and them may have.
Mr. Chairman, through you to Councilman Johnson, I absolutely, and I'll include with that the city engineer's office.
Okay, thank you.
Any other, thank you, Richard. Comments or questions from the committee? The chair has just one quick comment, and of course, the chair will not vote on an item unless there's a tie, which there won't be. But to Seth's point and my colleague, Mr. Laybourne's concerns, there was a significant problems with a company last year. And I know that myself and colleagues received many calls that they were just going into the right of way of these properties and tearing it up. And it wasn't just a singular incident. There were multiple complaints of these types of things. And I appreciate that the mayor addressed this problem directly with that particular vendor, as well as our construction manager, Mr. Khan, who kept track, a very detailed track of all the cost of damages that this vendor was doing. And certainly, I'm sure your office is the one that pursued the reimbursement for those damages. So when Seth says that we really need to take a look and see if these agreements need more teeth, I completely agree with them. And so I hope that that's looked at. And then the only other question I had, Stephanie, would be why, do we know why this agreement was held off as long as it was?
Mr. Chairman, to your question, I'm not sure. I know that I started as city attorney about a year ago. Mr. O'Donnell and their representative were negotiating the agreement and they asked that we hold it back. And I recently heard back from them in the last month.
Okay,
So something on their end, maybe an infrastructure issue would be my suspicion, but I can follow up with them and find out.
I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Chairman, Dr. Aldridge just have her hand raised.
Dr. Aldridge, please go ahead.
Yeah, Chairman White, through you, I just wanted to say that I have been working really closely with Doug Klon out of our engineering office. And I know that there were several concerns that were raised to the level of actually a resolution that was presented at a recent partisan county committee meeting regarding this. And so I know that they have been working on this, and to my understanding, and I'm sure Mr. Cobb could verify this there in the room, that all of the concerns that had been brought forward by a particular individual on behalf of the Buffalo Ridge neighborhood, those had been remedied and taken care of. So I know that they worked really hard to make sure that these were all remedied and addressed. But as Mr. Lloyd pointed out, it's an ongoing concern.
Mr. Cobb?
Chairman White, through you to Dr. Aldridge. Dr. Aldridge, yes, I can confirm that you are correct. I just want to bring up one other point, that some misconceptions related to this installation. And although I'm not going to speak on what they did and why they shouldn't have done what they did. But there is some misconceptions, and we as a group, and especially our group in particular, to educate the public on where the right-of-way actually is and what an easement means. So there were two different components here. When people say you're going into their yard, yes, it is their yard, but it is the right-of-way, which is under the jurisdiction of the city of Cheyenne. So a lot of this misconception was getting that misunderstanding of what right-of-way is versus what property lines are. And then again, what an easement is and where the easements are not. But again, the way their tactics were moving forward and just arbitrarily starting to go without communication was the main problem. And then after that, I think they've rectified most of it. They simply didn't have qualified people doing the work, and that's where it was. So I hope I didn't.
I think that's a legitimate concern on members of the public who are having to deal with these things.
Understood.
Any other comments or questions from the committee?
Not something.
Hearing none, all those in favor of the right-of-way license and use agreement, please signify by saying aye.
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 As no one's opposed, that item moves forward.
Number 24K, agreement between the city of Cheyenne and Cheyenne Rail Hub LLC to provide for the temporary storage of rail cars owned by the city of Cheyenne. From 2017 Specific Purpose Option Tax Fund and EDA number 05-79-06167 Cheyenne Rail Car Project Grant.
Staff report.
Chairman White, Tom Cobb, city engineer. I've been up here a lot today. Before you and for your consideration is a rail car storage agreement between Cheyenne Rail Hub LLC and the city of Cheyenne. The primary reason for this agreement is actually in four components. Again, the first and foremost, which is not mentioned in my memo, is to fulfill the council's strategic goals for 2022. Second one is the implementation of the tourism master plan conducted in 2021. Secondly, or thirdly, the temporary storage of up to 15 rail cars. The rail cars would be stored in an inconspicuous portion of the northwest portion of the rail park, not directly visible or accessible to the public. And in the diagram that I'm showing you now up on the screen, it's showing the area on the left is the map of the inset where it is in relation to the city. Obviously, it's at Swan Ranch Rail Park. And then the map on the right shows the area between two tracks. This is primarily used by UP. This is considered their peanut loop, they call it. So there's a switch off the UP right in that location. The upper north area of that there's quite a bit of room out there. Councilman Laybourne and I met Joe Stevenson out there Friday, and as you can see, you can't tell from the photo, but it is very inconspicuous. There's quite a bit of topographic change. It's an active rail car area, and they have video surveillance. and people are out there basically 24/7. With that, the cost for the funding and on this one, in this particular agreement, based on that, we have 1 year of free storage. The generosity of the Swan Ranch Group to do that for 1 year for free. And then after the 1 year period, a $10 per rail car per day for each day the rail car or fraction thereof is stored in the facility's property. And then all outside costs incurred from the Class 1 rail operator, Union Pacific Railroad, and the short line railroad operator moving in and out of the storage facility is directly our cost. Therefore, the summary of the costs are as follows. If we have 15 cars, $10 a day for 365 days would be up to $54,750 annually, beginning in year 2. The funding for this would be the 2017 specific purpose optional sales tax, and then EDA grant number 0579-06167, the Cheyenne Rail Card Project Grant for up to 2 cars. The term of the grant is predicated on the storage of the rail cars and will terminate upon the removal of the rail cars from their facility. And with that, I'll take any questions that you might have.
Stand by, Tom, because I think you're going to have a lot of questions on this. Comments or questions from members of the committee?
Committee or public?
Oh, my apologies, members of the public.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I read the memo that we just got this morning from Renee Smith, the grants manager, and I have some questions for her.
Ms. Smith, would you be so kind? Hi, Renee. Thank you and welcome. Go ahead.
Thank you. This is a unusual project, and I certainly appreciate all the effort that has gone into it because it's very unusual. And I know that there's actually been extra effort here because of the nature of the Visit Cheyenne engagement in this rather than straight city work here. But, and I'm not sure if you can answer these questions, but I certainly want to raise them. So when we look at this project, 3 times in this memo, you mentioned 2 rail cars. Now, those 2 rail cars and the proposed movement of the engine from Lions Park are part of the EDA grant, correct? And so identified. Where did the other 13 cars come from?
Mr. Chair, Renee Smith, Grants Manager. I received an email, just an email chain, basically from starting in August of 2021, dating back through Cheyenne Frontier Days of 2021, from the mayor who had reached out to UP. UP is in the process of looking for homes for their heritage collection, and the mayor had spoken to somebody during Cheyenne Frontier Days of 2021, wrote a letter to UP and requested these cars.
So you could forward me those emails in that letter.
Correct.
Thank you. That would certainly help understand that this is project that earlier, not too long ago, we had our goal setting meeting here in this room. And one of the points that was brought up, and I believe we agreed to, was an inspection of these cars. I don't know that anything has been done to make that happen, but I am glad and I appreciate our administrative assistant sending us the analysis of the asbestos and the condition of those cars, which I find to be very concerning. I don't know, have we identified of the 2 cars that are part of a grant, have we identified a vendor who would be able to remediate these cars and bring them into use?
Chairman White, through you to
Go ahead.
Councilman Laybourne. Mr. Laybourne, no, that's a separate contract. So this before us today is just the agreement to store these vehicles in a temporary location. That is a separate contract which will come before you. When we get it out on the street, we have to advertise it and put it together. Mr. Bartleborg and myself will be working on that along with Renee, and we'll put that out here shortly.
So just to follow up, I don't know if I'm out of order and following up with Mr. Layporn on this or not. So that contract hasn't even gone out for an RFP yet.
That is correct, sir.
Well, Mr. Chairman, that concerns me very much because this is a very unique and unusual commitment that we're making. I appreciate the time I took with Mr. Cobb to go out there and look at it. We don't know the cost or the entity that might want to bid on or propose on the remediation of the two cars. And I assume that probably that would be, would that, Mr. Cobb, would that be wrapped up in the same contract with the asbestos abatement on the existing engine in Lions Park?
Chairman, line through to Councilman Layborn. Yes, sir. Those are three together. That's part of this, the grant, EDA grant. Yes, sir.
So when we begin this process and expend EDA money, are we not beginning the acknowledgement and the initiation of the entire EDA grant?
You want to start and then I'll finish it. Go ahead.
So with this EDA grant, part of the primary objective, Mr. Chair, right through you.
That's okay.
The objective of EDA is job creation, retention of employees, things like that, and economic development. So the goal with this first phase is to establish sort of the rail car experience on 15th with these two cars and with the engine. So we're looking at the possibility of applying for future EDA grants through the EAA, Economic Adjustment Assistance, as a follow-on to these grants. So really the full project will require additional grant funding as we move forward, looking, 4 or 5 years down the road.
Mr. Chairman, well, that's what concerns me 4 or 5 years down the road. If we have a number of cars in the condition that I saw in the pictures, and I look forward to reviewing on the site as I believe we agreed to at this goal setting meeting. I am concerned that the language here, and I appreciate the effort that went into it, but when you talk about the UP's heritage fleet, when it comes to town and you see those classic, the dome liner, for instance, those are in use. They are in good condition, and they are not the condition that we see, at least as far as I've seen from those pictures that we're talking about. So I really question this whole matter. And Mr. Chairman, what sort of procedure do we need to have to go inspect those cars? We need approval from the UP, but I believe that it's only prudent for us to do that because when you look down the road, and of course, the area that Mr. Cobb and I looked at is very tucked away. I'm wondering if in the future, we are really committing to not only these two cars and the engine, but to 12 other cars, and which is beyond the scope of the grant, beyond the scope of the project. And I'm very concerned about that. I think that, and not only that, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I'm sure we've all reviewed the draft proposal from our consultants on the 15th Street experience or the 15th Street design. And I found that to be problematic in a number of ways. There was really, I couldn't, and maybe I can sit down with some of the people that worked on it and be further enlightened. But I still don't understand and don't believe we have a real schematic design of the greenway and where it might go in that process. This is a critical connection of our system that really is in a important area, a limited area, with issues of parking, with issues of certainly suggestions that were made about whether the street would be turned into one-way or not, whether the greenway might be considered to be run on the street as a shared lane, or whether we could modify the existing sidewalk, or an idea I'm particularly interested in is looking at how we could possibly incorporate it along the fence line when the fence goes in. So that's also a concern of mine. I don't believe that this project stands alone as moving these cars. This is a very important and complex project. So I hope that before next Monday, we can go take a look at these cars and get some idea. And of course, I think that it's important that we get a professional idea of the asbestos removal, the painting, and as they point out here, the effort that's made to bring those into a condition that the public would be entering into the car. I mean, and so there's a lot of questions here. I look forward to getting that information and determining whether or not we have accepted these at this point, or whether the moving of the cars constitutes the acceptance. Obviously, it would definitely be so, but those are some of my concerns, Mr. Chairman. I believe the city attorney has something to say here.
Ms. Foster, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Laymore's points. What you have before you today is the rail storage agreement. I think more pertinent is the agreement with UP to actually purchase these cars. That agreement won't be before council, and I just received it today at 10 o'clock. But it won't be referred to council until Monday. It will be on Monday's agenda. And I think it's that agreement that we really need to pick through to determine what cars we're receiving, what condition they're in, and the terms of that agreement, I think matter much more than the storage agreement. UP needed a storage agreement before it would agree to give us the cars. So this is step one, but if we execute this agreement and we don't buy the cars, it's, nothing happens here. So we need this agreement in place for the agreement that's more relevant to be executed and entered into, if we decide to do that.
Mr. Laybourne.
I believe you just said buy the cars.
I'm sorry, receive the cars.
Well, sometimes people give away things that probably need to be examined. And this is absolutely the case here. So I appreciate the comments thus far. And when is the next meeting of the working group on this project? I believe you meet bi-weekly, don't you?
We pushed it out just with this one because we were waiting. So it's gonna be about 2 or 3 weeks. I haven't settled it yet.
Well, I'd sure like to attend and learn more about this. I do want to comment, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, that this agreement is a definitive step in our acceptance of something that needs to be dealt with in the MOU. I'm surprised we don't do the MOU first, so we know what we're committing to. So I appreciate all the help that I've got from the folks here, and I know it's a difficult project, but it is also a very important one for the 15th Street investors and the people who put themselves into a belief that they were going to be part of a project that pretty important. And I know there's a lot of investment there. My main and primary concern here is parking and the use of this parking lot for these rail cars. And I also want to add that I'm look forward to knowing what the concept is here. I've heard verbally over time, as I've followed this project for a while, that we might be leasing these cars to some sort of an enterprise for them to go into business in these cars. And I'm wondering how we would manage that, or why we'd want to do it. And if that's not the case, what is the purpose of that base that's going to be built there and taking away that parking, what's going to happen in these cars? And how are we going to manage that? So a lot of questions to be answered. I appreciate the time to ask my questions today, but, and if you don't mind, I'm going to ask for the third time, when do we get to go look at them? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Laybourne. Any other comments or questions from the public?
Mr. Chairman, I normally don't, without ask a question specifically, but I just want to clear up one particular item.
Please
So
do.
the thing that I want to make sure we all understand is we had to get this agreement in place. It was predicated, as Ms. Foster indicated, the UP at least wanted us to know that we had an agreement to store the vehicles before we would get the MOU from them for the donation of the cars and all the other things that Mr. Laylawn is discussing. So again, we had to have, we can't go cart in front of the horse. We had to have horse first. So horse was, this agreement had to be in place for them to start even the MOU process. So again, this doesn't state any amount of cars. This simply states a per month, per day, per day.
I understand.
And again, the first year is free.
Thank-
So
Thank you, Mr. Cobb.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Laybourne, I get where you're going, and I'll have my comments under the committee portion. I don't want us to get too far off the rails, no pun intended. But we need to focus on the fact that this particular item is for a rail car storage agreement. I get how it relates to much.
no,
Bigger
Mr. Chairman,
things.
I'd like to speak to this particular agreement that's before us right now.
Okay, one more comment, Mr.
Well, I
Laybourne.
just have to say that when it comes to barnyard analogies, I have a much different view than Mr. Cobb. I think this is a perfect example of the cart before the horse, not the horse before the cart. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. There are no other comments or questions from members of the public. All those in favor?
No,
We still have to have a motion.
You don't have a motion.
Sorry, I apologize. Do I have hearing no other comments from the public? Do I have a motion from the committee?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve an amount not to exceed $54,750.
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded. Comments from the committee, and I'll just start off. I share my colleague from Ward 1's concerns on this. And quite honestly, I know we're discussing the railroad storage agreement, but it does, I mean, it's like a pebble in a brook, and it's got ripples that flow out a long way. And I'm concerned about this too. 3 cars, I was never really a big fan of this, but 3 cars, I was like, yeah, maybe. 15, I've got major questions on 15. And then I also, to my colleague's point, has anybody talked to the merchants who have invested lots of money, number one, in the 15th Street project, but also along the Reed Avenue corridor, which if the 15 cars goes through, I think there are plans to put several cars in that area. Anybody talk to these folks who invested a lot of money to see if they're fans of having railroad cars in that area? I'm not sure that they have been communicated with on that. So, and I also do want to inspect the cars in person myself. With that, I'll give it to my colleague, give it up to my colleagues on the Finance Committee if they have any comments or questions.
Dr. Aldridge.
Dr. Aldridge, go ahead.
Chairman White, through you, I too have a lot of concerns on this and visited with Mr. Cobb quite a bit last week. There is in this MOU storage agreement, it does say stores up to 15 rail cars. So I think that while we're talking about 3, it does provide for up to 15. But I also am wondering if the if we're looking at having these renovated or prepared and cleaned up and the asbestos and things removed, I believe it would make more sense to take them directly to the entity that we plan to have restore them, although at $1 million per train car, which is, I've heard numbers up to that amount, may not happen anytime soon. So I'm wondering if, especially if, I mean, if we're going to do one initially, if it might not be better to just make the initial move to wherever that agreement's going to be. But I'm also wondering if Stephanie could tell us, I'd like to see something put in here that says that this is only going to kind of a triggering effect, that this MOU will, or storage agreement will only be triggered if this project is completely passed and approved by the council. I think that right now there's not anything that says that. It gives an effective date of the last signature of either party, and that we can terminate it under a 30-day notice. But I think we should have something that would actually cause it to be initiated based on the other project being signed on. And I know that our city employees and the people that have worked really hard on this are frustrated by, this was set as a goal at our goal setting back last January. We discussed it briefly at our update recently, although the night was getting late and the discussion was cut off. I'm not so sure that the merchants in this area are in favor of this as it's been presented or as it's been discussed. I don't think we've really done a full presentation of 15 cars and I know it's been an idea that keeps morphing as we talk about it. I just think that this is quite honestly one of those, sometimes you have to know when to get off the horse and take the saddle. And I think while this was a great idea during goal setting in January, not such a great idea now. And I'm really reluctant to accept any funds on this from our federal partners, knowing that we may end up not having this project move forward at all and having to return the funds or to explain why we accepted funds we didn't use. So until we can have a lot of questions answered and we can actually see the rail cars firsthand, I'll be a no vote on this today.
Thank you, Dr. Aldridge. Richard, go ahead.
I didn't know Ken had anything.
Oh, Mr. Escabel, do you have any comments or questions? You have to.
I already texted Teresa, she's good.
Okay. Mr. Escabel doesn't have any comments or questions. Go ahead, Richard.
Forgive me, I'm actually gonna stay on your contract. The only problem I had with it was the 30-day part, that there really wasn't, if under the agreement, if the other entity chose to terminate that contract and give the city 30-day advance notice, that we really haven't discussed a plan B of where we would store them after, if they would terminate it. So between now and Monday, since she's gonna vote no, I know it's not on consent anyways now, but if we can figure out where exactly we're gonna store them in case there is a suspension of the 30-day, or within that 30-day, that we're not gonna have a storage unit, and what we plan to do if we take the cars at that point.
Chairman White.
Go ahead,
through
Mr.
Councilman Johnson. Yeah, I understood. I think we can do that. I guess just to be clear, from the intention from Granite Peak / the Rail Hub LLC, the only time that they would terminate the agreement is if they sell the property. So they have no intention at this time to sell. That's really why the clause is in there.
Yeah, and that part I understood when I read it. I just was like, if that is in any case, because properties can flip at any time before we chose, and then I'm guessing we would probably have a contract mod with a new entity if they did sell the property. But in case, the way that the language is written, and even though that's in their intent, it's probably good to have a plan B of where we're gonna put them if the contract does cease.
If there are no other comments or questions,
I have one
go
more.
ahead. Go ahead, Dr. Aldridge.
Mr. Chairman White, I just had one more. I believe, and I would like to see some sort of clause added to this contract or this memorandum of understanding, this rail car storage agreement, about the asbestos concern. I also think it would be wise to talk with DEQ and find out if we take asbestos-ridden cars out there and store them. I'd like to have some sort of, I see a hold harmless clause in here. But it does talk about adverse effects on the environment. I'm not sure that's really gonna hold up in a court of law if this all goes sideways and we have to remediate and remedy soil contamination and contamination for DEQ. So would love to hear Stephanie's thoughts on that, or have her think about how we might add that to this so that we don't end up violating environmental quality laws and rules and end up having multi-million dollar or super fund site that we have to figure out how to clean up.
Stephanie, any initial thoughts?
Mr. Chairman, through you to Councilman Aldridge, I will certainly look into that. I appreciate those comments.
Okay, if there are no further comments or questions from the committee, all those in favor of this agreement between City of Cheyenne and Cheyenne Rail Hub LLC to provide for the temporary storage of rail cars owned by the City of Cheyenne, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
This agreement moves forward with Dr. Aldridge voting no. Next item, please.
Number 24.
Thank you, Beth.
For the purchase, sale, and exchange of lands.
Staff report.
Beacon Tech Public Works, that's a hard act to follow, but I'll see what I can do here. This is a land swap between Mr. Isley and the King Ranch, which this is out at the Belvoir property. He's also our adjacent property owner for the Happy Jack landfill, but this particular area is near the Belvoir Ranch. I will say that there is a small error in the agreement, and that is that the 20.84 acres, which is parcel A, the city's parcel, appraised at $52,000, not $57,000. So there will be a substitute for use on Monday. So there's a substitute that changes it from 57.
Oh, yes, we just received this. Just received it this morning.
That is the only change. That is correct. Mr. Isley's property is parcel B, which is 13.85 acres and valued and appraised at $27,000. So what this is really, if you look at the map, and I think you all have a there's a green and a blue.
Yeah, I think it's online. I don't know that we have a.
It's in your packet.
It's not in.
What's that?
So the blue is the city's property and it's on the north side of the railroad track and is not accessible to us from the ranch itself. The green area is the King Ranch's property and is adjacent to the city property. It's basically part of the Belvoir Ranch. If you look at the lower right corner, it shows where in that area it is. So what we'd like to do is simply swap those two. The reason that the city's property at 20.84 acres appraised for higher is because it includes that strip of auto road. So although unusable to us or to Mr. Isley, it takes up about probably a third or even more of that 20.84 acres. So we do not intend to have any exchange of money. It is simply a swap of the land itself. And I would be happy to answer any questions. And I recommend approval.
Thanks, Vicky. Stand by. Comments or questions from the public?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Laborn.
I see on the map, and I think I understand basically what we're talking about here. And certainly a swap is a good thing, but why are we swapping for more property on the Belvoir?
The property really is just these two pieces are really, Mr. Isley cannot access his property. The King Ranch 13.85 acres, we can't access our property. It just seems like a reasonable thing to do, to swap the property and be able to utilize the property by each property.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, committee, I'm Mark Geis, the owner of the King Ranch Company. I was the one that proposed this to the Director Nemechek at Public Works as a like-kind exchange with no intent to being concerned about the financials. Because when you take the strip out underneath the auto road, they are very similar in size. I actually think I'm doing the city a favor on this. And hear me out. There's unrestricted access to this piece of property adjacent to Auto Road. I have problems with trespass, poaching, sightseers, their fireworks, those sort of things, which all would be a potential hazard. I just use that property to run livestock on. In order for me to go to the other side and use it, I have to get way across the bridge, transport them by trailer, do whatever. It doesn't work well for us. So I still will allow access to all your facilities. The Board of Public Utilities has cell tower that Verizon still has, and Black Hills for their wind farm and substation, and adjacent to the oil extraction. So that's what I'm asking for is exchange, so I can control some of that access and reduce your potential liability in the future, because we have had fires there. We had some horrific fires, fireworks and those sort of things have taken place. Railroad tracks have been the start of many fires. So that's why I proposed this. And the only expense I was suggesting may be covered would be anything that might be administrative.
Thank you, Mr. Isley, for being here today. Other comments or questions from the public? Hearing none, do I have a motion from the committee on this agreement?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I move to approve. And before we go to comment, Mr. Chair, I move to amend by substitute.
Wait,
You can't?
we need a second on the motion first.
Oh, sorry.
Gotta have a second on the
Sorry.
motion. Is there a
Second.
second on the motion? Okay, it's been moved and seconded.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve by substitute dated October 3rd, 2022, 11:32 a.m.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. So we're on the substitute. Comments or questions from the committee on the substitute?
Okay, I guess just to, because it was just between Vicky and I when she kind of brought it up, just to state that there was an error in the amount that the original contracts had an appraised value for the city of $57,000. That was changed in the substitute to have the appraised value of the city property at $52,000, and that's the reason for the substitute.
Thank you for that clarification. There are no other comments on the substitute. All those in favor of the main motion as amended? It's not amended, as a substitute. Please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Did we lose?
Aye.
Okay. Dr. Aldrich?
I said aye. I'm sorry.
Oh, we didn't hear you. I apologize. Thank you for that. So now we're back on the main motion. All those in favor?
I'll wait for-
Oh, sorry. Is there comments or questions on the main motion with the substitute? Doesn't look like it. Go
Okay.
ahead.
All right, so basically on my notes, just so that this doesn't resort to consent agenda that we have to pull off. So if you can come next Monday, I believe there's probably going to be additional questions in regards to a city land swap from other council members. So I'd just like you to be present for everything else, whether that be Zoom or in person. So that's the only reason for my no vote is so it doesn't end on consent.
It won't be on consent because we have what's up anyway. so
Oh, okay,
that's-
never mind, then we can, we're good. All right.
Any other comments or questions from members of the committee on the main motion with the substitute? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 As no one's opposed, that item as substitute moves forward. Thank you, Mr. Isley.
Thank you for your consideration today.
Thank you, sir. Next item, please.
Number 24M, professional services agreement between the city of Cheyenne and Quandel Consultants for the Reed Avenue Rail Corridor Scoping and Railroad Negotiation Project from 2017 and 2021 Specific Purpose Option Tax Fund.
Hi, Mr. Cobb.
Chairman
We
White.
should go
members of-
bowling
I
after this.
know,
It's
finance.
his birthday
It's, I will, preface this last one. It is my birthday today.
Wow.
Boy, I guess I
You gotta figure out better ways to celebrate.
I think so.
Go ahead, Mr. Cobb. Thank
Before
you.
you and for your consideration is a professional services agreement for the Reed Avenue Rail Corridor Scoping and Railroad Negotiation Project. So as we all know, it's been very difficult. We were been in an impasse for roughly the last year and a half to 2 years. And we moved forward. Myself and Mr. Bay reviewed several different statements of qualifications on file with our office. And we were in hopes of engaging a firm that has experience with both negotiation and designing public pedestrian components and improvements within and adjacent to Class 1 railroads. We found that particular consultant. Mr. Randy Graubacher is available today for questions if the committee, if you wish. I think he's online. Jennifer. He popped off. Okay, well, he was really excited about meeting everyone, and it intends to come up. Obviously, the reasons for this agreement are project program management and negotiations with the Burlington Northern Santa Fe, developing and revitalizing the concept plan in concurrence with BNSF, re-engage public involvement both with the stakeholders, all the stakeholders, including landowners, business owners, and interested parties, and then a resolution of the right-of-way and easement issues. And lastly, researching and finding additional funding opportunities for the final design and construction. This is just, again, for the concept plan and real negotiation with the railroad. Funding for this project will come under the 2017 1% specific purpose sales tax and use tax for the Reed Avenue Rail. The contract amount is $161,605. And we respectfully request your approval for this professional services agreement. We're really excited about Quandel. I know for that, those of you who did not attend the steering committee last week, Mr. Bay, my deputy gave a little presentation, but importantly, these components, Mr. Randy, Mr. Grauberger, and we also have DJ Mitchell, formerly the vice president of the Burlington Northern Santa Fe on this team. Mr. Grauberger was at least, and I don't want to misspeak, but 35 to 40 years with CDOT alone, and his only job was railroad negotiation. So I believe we have found the right team. They're coming up with some really good ideas already and are very excited to relaunch this project. And with that, if you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Cobb. Comments or questions from members of the public?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Laborn.
in this particular case, I especially want to note that I'm not a member of the public. I've been involved in this project for a number of years, and I really appreciate your birthday gift to the city here, Tom, because that's really the way I look at it. We had a meeting of the steering committee that was recently reinvigorated, and everyone was just really anticipating the professional interaction that's going to be able to take us to the promises that we made some time ago. So I know there was a lot of effort putting on this, and there really is some wonderful things are sure to flow from it, including the connection down to the 15th Street, which I think is important. And so I think that this is really long sought and well thought out. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments or questions from the public? Hearing none, do I have a motion from the committee?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve an amount not to exceed $161,605.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Comments or questions from the committee? I just want to thank you as well, Mr. Cobb. The Reed Avenue corridor has been issue very important to me, and it's been passed by the voters on 2 separate occasions. So when the voters entrust us with those, with that type of expectation, if you will, on something that's important to not only many members of council, but many stakeholders who've invested a lot of time and capital in that part of town. I think it's important that we deliver, and I appreciate your hard work on this. And also the hard work on behalf of my colleague from Ward 1. It's nice to be positive about this again, and for a long time I wasn't. So thank you again. There are no, are there any other comments or questions from the committee? Hearing none, all those in favor of this professional services agreement, please signify by saying aye.
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 As no one's opposed, that item moves forward.
Number 25D, contract modification number 1 to contract number 6612 between the city of Cheyenne, the Nature Conservancy, and Larimer County, Colorado, for the cooperative management of 1,800 acres of land, known generally as the Laramie Foothill Red Mountain Ranch, Wyoming, also known as the Big Hole.
Staff report, please.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Seth Lloyd. I'm with the City of Cheyenne Planning and Development Department. This contract in front of you today is a review of a previous contract that was passed by the city approximately 5 years ago for the management of the Big Hole. This management agreement allows for recreation to occur on the Big Hole, although they do have to access the Big Hole from the south through the Colorado open space. And through the review process, there was one substantial change that was desired, and that is to allow electric mobility devices, well, I should say mobility devices for those who are handicapped or otherwise impaired. Previously, there was a prohibition completely against motorized vehicles on the Big Hole. That change actually came from the Nature Conservancy, so that's their request to make that modification. Otherwise, we don't have any other substantive modifications, mostly just updates to dates and names on the contract. But I'm available for any questions.
Thanks, Seth. Stand by. Comments or questions from the public?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Laybourne.
So I'm interested in this motorized and non-motorized element of it. I see we have a representative here from the Nature Conservancy. Maybe he could help.
Mr. Chairman, Brent Lathrop with the Nature Conservancy. The idea on that is to allow people that are in wheelchairs and so on access to the property. That's all. Right way it is now.
But not e-bikes.
No, but these will probably be e-wheelchairs or that kind of equipment.
Do they have e-wheelchairs that are able to
Yes.
navigate those narrow trails?
Yeah, there's phenomenal equipment out there in the market now.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. That's will give people an opportunity to really experience something wonderful, and thank you.
Yeah, you can wait if you want. There might be other questions, other comments or questions from the public.
I don't see any hands raised over here.
Hearing none, do I have a motion from the committee?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Comments or questions from the committee? Hearing none, all those in favor of this contract modification, please signify by saying aye.
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 As no one's opposed, that item moves forward. Thank you. Next item, please.
Number 26B, consideration of bid number E-2-23 for one new 2022 to 2024 patch truck for the city of Cheyenne Street and Alley Division from 2019 to 2022 optional 1% sales tax fund.
Staff report.
Good afternoon, Chairman, committee members. I'm TJ Bartlebort, Purchasing Manager. For the committee this afternoon is consideration of bid for one new patch truck for the City of Cheyenne Street and Alley Department. I wanted to provide some information about a new provision that this bid includes, and then I'll turn it over to Vicki for the remainder of the staff report. This bid consideration is the first that this committee has considered that contains a surcharge and escalator special provision. This provision allows for an amount not to exceed 15% of the total value of requested items on the bid to be utilized to cover cost increases related to two situations. The first being original equipment manufacturer, OEM, and or body surcharges applied to the cost of the vehicles after the bid opening date, or the second situation is a model year escalator. This special provision has been included due to the extensive lead times that we are seeing on equipment orders. As an example, the truck to be purchased under this bid has a delivery time of 550 days, which is April of 2024, if approved by council next week. Another bidder on the same bid had a delivery of 750 days, which is October 30th of 2024.
Wow.
Due to these extensive delivery times and ever-growing inflation, vendors have requested that the city consider a mechanism to account for the cost changes that a product experiences over a multiple-year order. This was brought about when the city solicited a bid for this exact truck earlier in the year, and the city received no bids. Multiple vendors reached out to me to discuss their concerns with delivery timing and future cost increases, and this was the reasoning for adding this provision. The provision was discussed at length with local truck dealers, including Peterbilt of Wyoming, Jackson Group Peterbilt, MHC Kenworth, McCandless Truck Center, and Floyd's Truck Center, and the provision was additionally reviewed and approved by the city attorney's office. This bid contains a 15% contingency in the amount of $39,981.15. Utilization of these funds shall not be automatic or guaranteed and are subject to review and approval by the city. At the time of bid submission, bidders sign and certify that any requested cost, surcharges, or increases proposed shall be fair and proper and not tainted by any collusion, conspiracy, connivance, or unlawful agreement. And the city does have the ability to decline requests if they cannot be justified or validated. That's the background I wanted to provide on this, since it's a new and unique thing that we're doing. So I'm happy to stand for any questions, and I'll let Nikki take the rest.
Vicki Nemechek, Public Works. We did have two bidders with actually 4 separate body types that were bid. So though there was only one bidder that fully met the bid specifications, and that was Floyd's Truck Center with a step patch body. The lowest responsive bid was from Floyd's with step manufacturing patch body, and the bid award amount is $326,499.15, and does include the 15% escalator that TJ discussed. And for any questions?
Thank you both. Comments or questions from the public?
I don't see any hands raised.
Hearing none, do I have a motion from the committee?
Mr. Chair, I move to accept the bid from Floyd's Truck Center Incorporated, Cheyenne, Wyoming, in an amount not to exceed $326,499.15.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Comments from the committee? TJ, the only thing I would suggest is it was a very detailed explanation on why you've included that clause. You might want to send that out to all council, just because this is probably not the first time we're going to see this.
Correct, will do.
Thank you. If there are no other comments or questions from the committee, all those in favor of this big consideration, please signify by saying aye.
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 No one's opposed. Next item, please.
26C, consideration of bid number E-4-23 for ice control product for the city of Cheyenne Street and Alley Division from 2019 to 2022 optional 1.
Hey, this is Michelle. Can you hear me?
Dr. Aldridge, this is Chris Jones. I can hear you, but my
Yeah.
screen's frozen as well.
Yeah, I just got a message saying I'm all of a sudden the host. So I think we must have gotten cut off from the rest of the room.
Okay, I would suggest waiting a few minutes, see if they come back on.
Okay, we'll wait. Hopefully they know where we are. I did just get a text message saying that they are having a power outage at the city building.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
This is Robin. TJ just said it was just a minute and they're going to try to rehook us up.
Thank you.
So they're going to do this all by just telephone now. Oh, there we go.
We know she works.
Hello, everyone. We're back.
Okay, we can hear you.
Okay, great.
And can you hear everything through Zoom now? Yeah. Okay, awesome. I'll let you go.
That might be a sign, but we'll continue on. Oh,
I'm sorry. It
we're-
put me at me.
that's okay. We're on 26C.
26C, consideration of bid number E-4-23 for ice control product for the Valley Division from 2019 to optional 1% sales tax.
Committee members, TJ Bartle, board purchasing. Is a consideration of bid for ice control street and alley division. Again, I'll provide a little bit of background on it. I'll turn it over to Vicky for the remainder. We have included a fuel surcharge provision that allows for the escalation and de-escalation of cost per ton. Or we've requested a 10% contingency to cover the additional decrease. Our cost per ton will go down as well. 10% of this bid award amount is $81,000. Just confirming the delivery of this product is done solely via truck and trailer, and fuel plays a huge factor in the cost of the product. Our base fuel rate that will be used as our baseline was established when the bid was released on August 15th, 2022, when fuel was $4.963 per gallon. It appears that fuel costs have stabilized for the past few weeks, and for the week ending September 26th, fuel was at $4.885. As a quick reminder, earlier this spring, a contract modification was approved by the governing body to retroactively add the same fuel surcharge provision to the previous 2-year contract with Desert Mountain that didn't originally include the provision when we bid. So we're just trying to get into the practice of including this now forward as we move forward. Thank you for your time and consideration, and please let me know if you would need anything else.
Vicky Desert Public Works, this is for a 2-year period. For Desert Mountain was the bidder. We did receive no bids from Morton Salt and Compass Minerals. So Desert Mountain was the only responsive bidder. The amount is not to exceed $891,000 for the 2-year period. That is cost per ton of $133 for year 1 and $137 for year 2. We have 1,000 tons each year, plus an opportunity to buy an additional 2,000 for each year. So that's 6,000 tons total for $841,000. We recommend approval. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Vicky. Comments or questions from the public? Hearing none, do I have a motion from the committee?
Mr. Chair, I move to accept the bid from Desert Mountain Corporation, Riverton, Wyoming, in an amount not to exceed $891,000.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Comments from the committee? Hearing none, all those in favor of the bid consideration, please signify by saying aye.
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 As no one's opposed, next item, please.
Number 26D, consideration of bid number E-5-23 for bulk fertilizer application for the City of Cheyenne Parks Division. From 2019 to 22, optional 1% sales tax fund, recreation fund, and the general fund.
Staff report.
Mr. Chair, Jason Sanchez, Community Rec and Events. So this is for our bulk fertilizer app that goes across all of our park areas. We've been applying our fertilizer in this method for many years. The reason why this is the first time it's before the governing body is because the price of fertilizer and fuel finally exceeded the threshold that requires council approval. These folks can come up and they do this bulk fertilizer app in one day. They have units that are calibrated and that could hold the amount of product that we need to get through the city in one day. If we were to try to do this on our own, it would take us the better part of a month and multiple employees to get this product down. So again, the low bid was for $39,160. Excuse me, through Agfinity. And we asked for your support, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Thanks, Jason. Stand by. Comments, questions from the public? Hearing none, do I have a motion from the committee?
Mr. Chairman, I move to accept the bid from Agfinity Incorporated, Brighton, Colorado, in an amount not to exceed $39,160.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Comments from the committee?
When you're ready.
Go ahead.
I guess I just didn't see, was this for a fall application or a spring application?
Mr. Chair, through you, we generally only put out one application. That's in the fall. That's when the plant's translocating nutrients, takes the fertilizer, develops, encourages more root growth versus shoot growth. And it's a very slow release nitrogen source so that we're not having to sweep up grass clippings also.
So since this is hopefully going to approve next Monday, what's our estimated time or date that we think they're going to come up here and do this year?
Mr. Chair, through you, we have until the end of October for them to accomplish this fertilizer.
That's 2 weeks after the meeting. Okay, thank you.
Other comments or questions from the committee? Hearing none, all those in favor of this big consideration, please signify by saying aye.
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 No one's opposed. That item moves forward. Next item, please.
Number 26E, consideration of bid number S-2-23 for an agreement between the city of Cheyenne and Judge Netting Mountain West for the Happy Jack landfill litter fence repair project from the solid waste fund.
Mr. Chairman,
You've been waiting so patiently since the very beginning. I'm sorry it took us so long. Go ahead, ma'am.
Adele Bartel, Public Works Staff Engineer. So the 40-foot litter fence at the landfill is in need of repairs. 2 sections of the fence are completely torn down and 2 more sections are on the way down, along with several other small holes and other pieces of the fence that are kind of tearing apart too. Judge Netting was the lowest bidder at just under $40,000.
Okay. Thank you. Adele, is it?
She was my team lead at our leadership conference.
Nice. Stand by, Adele. Questions or comments from the public? Hearing none, do I have a motion from the committee?
Mr. Chair, I move to accept the bid from Judge Netting Mountain West, Syracuse, Utah, in an amount not to exceed $39,037.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Comments from the committee? Hearing none, all those in favor of the bid consideration, please signify by saying aye.
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 No one's opposed, that item moves forward, and as there are no other items on the agenda, this meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everyone.